I think most of you know me. If not, I'm Bruce Young. I'm with the Lamar's Club, and I'm the district grant subcommittee chair. This is a beginning of my going into my third year, and it's a 3-year term. So if you get excited about grants and you'd like to take over after me, let me know. We can talk about it. I'm going to be recruiting someone to take my place starting in the 2020-21 Rotary year. So this is the grant training. This is actually completely reworked training materials from the last couple of years that I had inherited from INA, which were great, but making some changes in the way we're administering the grants using a website to do that this year. So I needed to redo the training slides. So this is, so bear with me. This will be the first time I've given these slides live. So hopefully it'll go well. So roll call, I think we already finished. Again, if anybody's on who has not told me what club they're with, unmute and let me know. If any of you see someone come on that I miss, and break in and we'll get them introduced, so I make sure that I get credit for everyone that's here. So the purpose of this training is to go over the grant process so your club can be qualified to participate in the district grant and get a district grant for 2019-20 Rotary year. General overview, we're going to go over a little bit of background on the Rotary Foundation. For many of you, this will be a lot of a review because you know a lot about the foundation already. But I wanted to add this because fundamentally, this is how the foundation gets the rubber to the road, is through the grant process. So I thought it'd be good to talk about the foundation a little bit itself. I'm going to give you some general grant information, and then we're going to talk specifically about the District 5610 grant process and how you can participate, including the new use of the new website we're using. This is a lot to digest in 2 hours. There's actually 78 slides in this slide deck. So my expectation is you will use this presentation as a reference. I've got some very detailed instructions on how to use the website and some other information. So some of the slides I'm going to go through very quickly. This slide set will be available to download from the district website. There is a version there to now. I will update it again tomorrow, or have Nicole update it again tomorrow with the version that I'm using tonight, with maybe some updates if I find something wrong as I'm going through it. And then hopefully it'll be relatively stable for the next 3 times that I can make this training. If you have any questions during this, feel free to go ahead and interrupt me. Just unmute yourself and ask the question. I know from experience it works a whole lot better if you unmute yourself before you ask the question. I've been on lots of video conference calls over the years of my career, and it's really funny. You sit there asking the questions, no one answering, and then you realize I didn't unmute. So remember to unmute first. So first we're going to cover the Rotary Foundation. The Rotary Foundation is the charitable arm of Rotary International. They are 2 distinct and separate bodies, but very closely related. It's a highly rated public charity, and it's funded by donations from Rotarians. That's you and me and about 1.2 or 3 million other people around the planet. It's provided over $3 billion to charitable projects planned and driven by Rotarians around the world over the last 100 years. The mission of the Rotary Foundation is to enable Rotarians to advance world understanding, goodwill, and peace through the improvement of health, support of education, and the alleviation of poverty. Why is that important? Well, because every grant that the foundation funds should support this mission. In fact, when you submit a grant in this new website, there is a checkbox that'll say, I certify that this grant is in line with the Rotary Foundation mission. So it's good to understand what the mission is, or you're going to say that. There are the 6 areas of focus support that mission. And those are peace and conflict prevention and resolution, disease prevention and treatment, water and sanitation, maternal and child health, basic education and literacy, and economic and community development. Hopefully those are all well known to you. It's a very highly rated charity. The Charity Navigator gives it its 4-star rating, which is their highest rating and has for the last 11 years. They have a 100% score on transparency and a 97.5% score on financial health. So it's a very efficient, very well-run charity. It was named the World's Outstanding Foundation for 2016 by the Association of Fundraising Professionals, and 91% of its funds were spent directly on programs. Less than 3% are spent on true administrative overhead. What's the money spent on? This chart shows how the Rotary Foundation spends its money. The biggest chunk is Polio Plus. The next biggest chunk is on global grants. And then the third largest line is district grants. And that's where we're going to focus on today, although we'll mention some of the others a bit. The other items are peace centers, program operations, fund development. There's the administration up there at the end. Well, within the Rotary Foundation, there are several funds. First is annual fund and share. And that's when you, for example, that's where we put the money from the raffle. Money that goes in there are invested for 3 years to pay for administration costs of the foundation. And then after 3 years, half is returned to the district to control, and then we control those funds are spent. Half of that for district grants, half for global grants. The World Fund is what receives the other half of those donations after 3 years. And that's used for global initiatives and matching global grants. The Polio Plus Fund is a separate fund within the foundation. It's dedicated to the global eradication of polio. And then there's the Endowment Fund, which is a permanent endowment. Only earnings are spent, and those earnings are allocated and come back into the Share Fund and World Fund each year. But the endowment is, the principal is not touched. So what are the projects of the foundation? Well, polio eradication is probably our biggest and most well-known project within Rotary. It started in 1979 with a project to vaccinate children in the Philippines, and we reduced 99.9% of annual cases. We're this close, as they say. Polio is now endemic only in Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Nigeria. Over 2.5 billion children have been vaccinated, and over 1.8 billion has been contributed by Rotary. Hopefully you're very familiar with the polio eradication project. Other projects include grants written and managed and partially funded by districts and clubs. These include the Rotary Peace Centers, which is a partnership with 7 universities around the world to train people how to deal with conflict resolution and prevention. And the Global Grant Scholars. We currently have a Global Grant Scholar, DJ Prevel, who's an Augustana grad. He's studying peace and conflict resolution for a master's degree at King's College in London. These scholars must be studying in a field related to one of the 6 areas of focus outside of their own home country, and they're sponsored by the home district. Giving to the foundation, there are several programs. One is Every Rotarian Every Year, which asks that every Rotarian support the foundation annually. A suggested minimum for each Rotarian is $100. Not everyone can do that, but if you can, that's great. There are many different ways to give. You can participate in our district raffle, which just ended. We have you can do a one-time donation by mail or online, and you can set up regular giving. Some clubs will include giving in their dues and forward that on to the foundation, or you can get online like I do and do an automatic payment by credit card, which is a great way to do it. Just takes it out every month on its own. You can also include a bequest in your will. Recognition for giving include the Paul Harris Fellow, which is for a minimum of $1,000 in lifetime giving. Paul Harris Society is for people who have committed $1,000 a year or more on an ongoing basis. A sustaining member is someone that's committed at least $100 a year to the annual fund. The Bequest Society is for those that have committed $10,000 or more through their estate as a bequest. Major donors are people that have lifetime donations over $10,000. And then the Arch Clump Society, which recognizes those that have made lifetime donations over $250,000. And there's different levels of those last two, but I want to warn you, it tops out at $10 million. So if you're going to exceed $10 million, you're stuck. You don't get any more recognition. Now I'm going to talk a little bit more about grants. Are there any questions on the foundation in general before we move on? Okay, moving on now. There are three types of grants. Two that you should be quite familiar with, because we've been talking about them for quite a few years now. Global grants, which are sponsored by a Rotary Club in a recipient country and a Rotary Club in another country. They have to be two different countries that work together to sponsor a global grant. They have to be related to one of the 6 areas of focus, and the funds from the districts are matched by the foundation from the World Fund. Clubs and individuals can also donate directly to a global grant. District grants are sponsored by individual Rotary clubs or a district, and club money is matched by the foundation in our district grants. And the new, in 2019, just came out, first I'd heard of it was an email that came out earlier this month, are disaster grants. They're sponsored at the district level and don't require any matching funds. So I know I've been in contact with Dave and Ina about these, and there's some talk about whether we can get a disaster grant to help out with some of the flooding issues that have been happening in our area, especially on the reservations. I know that District 5630 in Nebraska has gotten a district grant. I think it's been approved. I know they've applied for it to provide meals for people that are working to support the flood victims in Nebraska, including some that are very close to the South Dakota border. So it's a new and exciting type of grant that be thinking about if there's a place for that. So this graphic shows the funding model for grants. We've talked a little bit about this already. So funds are contributed to the foundation. So, for example, $100,000 is donated by our district to the share fund. Those are invested for 3 years. So in 2018, money that came in this Rotary year, been invested for 3 years. And interest plus 5% is taken out to fund the administration of the foundation. At the end of that 3 years, so in 2021, 50% of that money, or $50,000, is returned to the district. $25,000 for use in global grants that we can support, and $25,000 for use for our district grants. The rest of the money, which would be $45,000, goes to the World Fund for global grants, with $5,000 used to fund administrative costs on top of the interest. So a quick overview of global grants. Again, we talked about that a little bit already. One key thing is there's a minimum project budget of $30,000. So these have got to be bigger projects than a typical district grant, and they have to address an area of focus. Grant proposals are submitted online to the Rotary Foundation. This is an ongoing process. It doesn't have a fixed annual cycle like district grants have. After the application is submitted, the proposal can be accepted by the foundation to fund the grant. If you're interested in looking into global grants, you should be talking to Mike Gibson and myself about that as early and often, about getting how to do that and get that done. I'm really not an expert in that area. We're actually looking for a district global grant coordinator. So if you're interested in that, let me or Mike or Dave or Ina know. There is a regional foundation coordinator at the zone level, however, that could help with that. And I know Steve Sikorsky has experience with global grants. He's written several now with the wheelchair distribution in Romania. So again, the 6 areas of focus we've already talked about. Those are really key because not only are they required for global grants, but our district grant, District 5610 grant, requires that it address one of those areas as well. Global grant funding, we've really already talked about. The one thing is if there are non-Rotarian cash contributions, those are matched 50%, as well as direct cash contributions by clubs and Rotarians. Those are matched 50% by the World Fund. And then any cash contribution has to contribute an additional 5% to cover administrative costs. So global grant transparency. Any Rotarian can look at any grant. You can sign into My Rotary and navigate to the Grant Center. Click on Grant Search. Use the search bar to search by grant number or grant title, or you can search by area of focus. So you can see all the grants that are out there. There's also, in the website I'm going to talk about in just a minute, you can look, a lot of global grants are listed there as well you can look at, including some looking for funding still. So let's move on to district grants, which is the main focus of tonight. So district grants are created and managed by a club in our district. You can have another Rotary club inside or outside the district as a partner, but we need to have a sponsor within our district, a club that's a sponsor it. You can address a need locally or outside of your community. It can even be international. My club did a grant in Haiti a couple of years ago. These are for a maximum of 2-year duration. They're often much shorter. It can even be a 1-day project. But they're not to fund ongoing projects. The clubs and partners must contribute 50% or more of the total expenses by our district rules for the club grant. So you need to have money that you're going to match with the foundation funds. I will talk about the needs. Global grants actually require a specific needs assessment as a part of the process. We don't require a formal needs assessment as a part of the district grant, but you really need to look at what are the true needs in your community and spend some time thinking about it so that it's an effective use of the funds. Okay, so there's 2 types of district grants. The 5610 grants, which have a maximum award of $15,000, which means if you've got a 50% match, a total budget, or a 100% match, I should say, is total budget is $30,000, $15,000 max from the foundation plus matching from your club or other sources of $15,000. And you must address an area of focus. CAP grants for community assistance programs have a maximum award of $1,000. And typically what I've seen is they've got a total budget of $5,000 or less. Obviously, if you've got a match funds, they've got a, $2,000 is a common budget. And with CAP grants, you don't need to address an area of focus. That is preferred, and if we have to select between projects, then we'll give preference to those that do address an area of focus. Again, CAP grants are often local, but just because they say community assessment, that doesn't mean they have to be in your community. They can be outside your community as well. So I've talked a little bit about the website we're going to be using. Let me introduce that to you here. It's matchinggrants.org. It allows you to look at global grants as well as district grants. And there's a section for legacy matching grants, which is an older program that's no longer used, but they're there. This website was written and maintained by a Rotarian out of San Diego. And I stumbled onto it talking with the grants coordinator from District 5630. So he told me about it. I evaluated it. I think it's really going to make it very helpful to use to manage our grants process. And I've created some detailed instructions as a part of this presentation to hopefully make it easy for you guys as well. So to be eligible for a grant, the foundation itself has some eligibility guidelines. And these come from, this is a summary and a partial list, the things that are more important, from the Rotary Foundation's terms and conditions for Rotary Foundation district grants and global grants. This was a mouthful of a title, but the link is there if you want to look at and read the full document. But importantly, kind of got the things that I think most often come up in a district grant, at least from my experience in the last 2-3 years, that are important to know. One is it must relate to the mission of the Rotary Foundation. We talked about that already. It must adhere to all applicable laws, both in your country as well as any, if you're outside the country or state, the state or outside country that you're working in. You can't fund any expenses that are incurred before approval of the grant. Our Rotary or our district rules say we don't want you to have any expenses before we actually send you the check. But under Rotary Foundation guidelines, they can't be incurred. You have to comply with all Rotary International rules and policies. That includes Rotary International's conflict of interest rules, their privacy rules, their trademark usage policies. I've got links in the back of this training with links to all those documents, the slide with links to all those documents in the back. You are supposed to have signage identifying Rotary, but that cannot exceed $500. So they really want to make sure that people know the foundation's mission, that we're really out there making a difference in our community.
Hey, Bruce.
Yeah?
Ina here. So if a project is more programmatic rather than an actual project, and you don't really have anything to put a sign on, or is there options?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at it, I think I summarized here probably overly. Basically, the rules are have signage or other appropriate indication that this is a foundation sponsored. As essentially what the role of the foundation is in this project. You look at the exact terminology in the document, but I kind of summarized it here and oversimplified probably.
Thank you.
Yep. There's also a list of things that grant funds may not be used for. Those include fundraising. You can't get the grant to raise funds for the project. You can't purchase land or buildings. It can't be primarily public relations for Rotary. You can't give unrestricted cash donations to other organizations. And you can't fund other organizations. They're basically operating administrative costs for other organizations. You can partner with other organizations, however, in joint projects. So what are some other rules for district grants? Well, I like to think of it, just remember the four-way test goes a long way to understanding what's an appropriate grant and what's not. Some other things, it must be a new project for your club. This is not something that's supposed to be used to fund this year's version of the same thing you've been doing for the last 5 years. It must be a club-driven project. That, again, you can have a partner, but it should be a Rotary project that you are in the driver's seat on. It doesn't mean if you're working with, for instance, the local Boys and Girls Club, you can't have them listed on signage and everything as well, and have them involved with how planning and working with the grant, but it should be driven from your club. It may include appropriate travel costs. I know in some years past this may not have been true, but it can. But there are some special rules if you're going to include travel. Contact me. We can talk about making sure that we meet those rules. And then two that always come up every year I've been involved. It cannot be just a cash donation. You can purchase equipment and donate the equipment to an organization, but you can't donate cash to the organization to go do things. And this actually comes back from the foundation rule. You can't fund their operating costs. The only way to really be sure that's true is not just give them cash. So again, you can see, I'll use an example of Vermilion's project of this year. You can't donate money to the organization that's renovating the community center to buy kitchen equipment, but you can buy kitchen equipment and donate it to that organization. The other aspect that comes up every year is you can't start the project until a grant check is received. And by start project, I mean incur expenses. You can certainly plan, you can publicize, you can do all sorts of whatever you want, but don't incur any expenses until the grant check is received. The one issue with district grants in general is they have an annual cycle. We can only put in one district grant request per year, and in general that's fully subscribed when we put it in. It wasn't this year, but in general, that's true. And so if you miss that cycle, you got to really wait till next year to do it. So keep the grant cycle in mind when you're planning your projects. Speaking of the timeline, application due dates are July 31st for district grants. As I mentioned earlier, continuous global grants and disaster grants, you can submit them anytime as appropriate. Once we've got those grants in by July 31st, our district grant subcommittee will review them. And our target is to have those approved, the projects we've approved decided by August 31st. And then once we go through that process, we have to get approval from the Rotary Foundation and get the check from them to our account, and then get those checks to you. So that means that typically our checks get mailed out by mid to late September. So again, the target is the end of September for that. And then a project must be completed within 24 months the time your check. One thing that I will point out is, in general, if you've got a project, we're talking about timing, is don't plan on incurring expenses before the end of September, basically October 1st. If you got a project, say, that is has to be timed with the new school year, when the kids go back to school in late August, you need to submit that in July 31st of the year before to fit in with that time frame. That's just an artifact of the fixed timing cycle of district grants. Another thing I'll point out is that a report is due within 60 days of completion of the project. So remember that. We'll talk more about keeping records and receipts. So to qualify your club to be eligible for a grant, there's several things that are required. And this has to happen, each one of these things has to happen every year for you to be eligible. One is you have to have at least one member attend grant training. So for those of you that are here tonight, you're meeting that requirement for your club. You have to have a signed memorandum of understanding. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a couple slides, actually the next slide. You have to have a proof of an IRS 990 filing. The IRS 990 filing is the form that needs to be filed with the IRS that says that by a tax-exempt organizations. And if you don't file one of those for 3 years in a row, I'm told, you lose your tax-exempt status, which is not a good thing. So they're also found a good resource on District 5630's website about the IRS Form 990 if you've got questions. It was written by a professor in professor of tax law at the University of Nebraska-Kearney. And so I found that to be a very interesting resource. So if you're not sure your club's filing or what you need to do, or if you have filed, go there and take a look and make sure that your club's getting that filing in every year. You need to be current on your reporting for past grants. That means if you've got a grant from 2016, 17, or later, that final report has to be in before we can for you to be current. Right? Excuse me, 2016, 17, or earlier, not later. And be current on any interim reports on 2017, 18, or 18, 19 grants. You have to be current on your district and Rotary International dues. You have to, and new this year, we're going to ask you to have a foundation giving goal entered into your Rotary Club Central. That your president was asked to do that at PETS, and we're going to check on that before we award your grant. So we'll check with the president, make sure they've got your giving goal. There's no penalty for missing the goal, but we want you to have a goal in there. One other thing is we will give preference to clubs that are giving to the foundation share fund, but we've had clubs that get grants that haven't given a lot to that in the past, but that's a preference item. So what is the memorandum of understanding? Well, it's a set of rules that your club is agreeing to get a grant. You can download that from the District5610.org website under the Rotary Foundation and Grants. It's a document. We also passed out a paper copy of this to the presidents at PETS training this year. Read it. It formally spells out responsibilities and obligations. And the signatory is your president for next year, and the president-elect for the next grant application year should understand that before they sign it, because they're committing the club to live up to those requirements. If you don't have a president-elect for the following year, in this case for 2021, I know a lot of clubs don't look that far out, then it can be signed by another club officer. But we need 2 signatures on that MOU. It's good for 1 year, and then you have to submit that to the matchinggrants.org website. So there's a process for doing that through the website. There's a link there. It's not, you can either use this link and put that in your browser, or there's a link under the Rotary Foundation and Grants menu on our district website called Club Qualification that will take you there. Once you're there, make sure the proper Rotary year is selected. So in this case, 2019-20. Then click on your club name. And then there are 2 options to submit the MOU. If you've got a scan of the signed paper document, you can upload it as a PDF document, and then I'll get notice of that, and if it's okay, I can qualify it and say that's been uploaded. Or you can use an electronic signature. Only use this if you have emails for both your 2019-20 and your 2020-21 president. Put their names and emails in there, and then you can click on Send Signature Keys. It will send them an email with a 4-digit code that they can go on the log site and enter that code to electronically sign the document. I'll talk about this more later in how a grant is signed. So I'm not going to go into more detail that now. So there's 2 ways to upload the MOU to the website. Any questions that we've had so far? Okay, now we're going to get into more details of your grant. What you should be thinking about as you're putting together your grant to submit. There are really 2 key principles to district grants: stewardship and sustainability. Stewardship is important because we need effective use of foundation funds. We need to have accountability and transparency and Rotarian oversight of a project to make sure things are handled like they're supposed to be. And sustainability, it's important because we want to have lasting impact after the funding's spent. We don't want to just be a flash in the pan and everybody forgets about it, and there's, a month down the road, everyone's forgot about it, there's no lasting impact to the grant. We want to have optimal use of local resources, preserve our natural resources, and affect the maximum number of beneficiaries. So what are some important things related to the financial aspects of stewardship? One is you have to have a separate bank account for grant funds. This is forced by the Memorandum of Understanding. So when your club, this is probably one of the things that's most surprising. When I first ran into this a few years ago as club president, I said, oh, we have to set up a separate account for this. No investment accounts are allowed, and if it's interest-bearing, interest must be spent on a project or return to the foundation. So it's simpler if you can get a bank that will have a no-interest checking account. It's required even if you've got one check you're going to deposit and then one check you're going to write. That's just the way it is. Sorry. Funds need to be distributed in such a way that's transparent and fully accountable, including you're supposed to have 2 Rotarians sign every check. So those are some key parts of it. One thing I'll point out about a couple more things about sustainability I forgot from the previous slide. Here is the sustainability when local resources are used, the project is more likely to be sustainable. If you come in from the outside, do a project for somebody and leave, that tends to fall by the wayside because there's no local ownership. On the other hand, education is almost inherently self-sustaining, because once you teach somebody something, then they can use that going forward in the rest of their lives. So those are a couple examples on sustainability that I forgot to mention. So going back to stewardship, funding of the project, contributions can be raised by Rotarians. You can't ask the beneficiary for money in exchange for the grant, but funds can come from partners. So if you're going to partner with, for instance, the local Boys and Girls Club, and what you're going to do is you're going to provide athletic equipment to their patrons. The beneficiary is the patron of the Boys and Girls Club, but your partner is the Boys and Girls Club. But you can't fund, again, you can't fund their operations, but you can provide them with money to help with, or with equipment to help with their activities. Funds cannot come from other grants. You can't apply for a community foundation fund and then match it with Rotary Foundation fund. If you get contributions, be sure to credit them to their donor. That can happen with signage, information on your website, your Facebook page. Make sure they feel appreciated for the money they donated. Another key aspect is you need to be clear of any serious conflicts of interest. That can be either direct conflict of interest where Rotarian benefits financially or personally, or indirect, where someone is associating with a Rotarian just for that benefit. So if there's any question about conflicts of interest, bring it up and we'll talk about it and figure out if there really is a problem or not. Accountability, you need to track all income and expenditures. You need to keep a ledger of that as the project is going on. Don't come back later and try to figure it out. Doesn't mean you have to buy QuickBooks or hire an accountant. If you've got a really large, complicated project, maybe, but probably not. Just keeping track of things in an Excel spreadsheet or even a paper ledger is fine. The key point is you've got to be clear, complete, and you need to maintain the receipts. Keep the receipts for every expenditure. Keep an inventory or spreadsheet of non-consumable items purchased and donated so that you know what happened to it. You need to verify the equipment is kept and maintained. Again, from a stewardship point of view and sustainability, it needs to be used going forward. And you need to retain those records for 5 years. What that means kind of indirectly is you need to have a succession plan in place, because you can't guarantee that the same person that started the project and is keeping track of it now is going to be around in 5 years. They may have moved, they may have passed away, who knows, they may not be involved with Rotary. So you need to have a succession plan for your club to keep track of things that's done for 5 years, even when that person moves on. Again, that can be, needs to provide access to interested parties, needs to be subject to audit, and electronic or paper is okay. Again, this is something that you can use the matchinggrants.org website and upload documents to that as your retention plan. Reporting. Once the grant has been awarded, this is a new requirement that's kind of enabled by the website. I'm going to ask for quarterly updates until the district grant's complete. And that includes CAP grants, so either 5610 or CAP. It's really easy on the website. You just go in and do a quick update to update things that's going on. Do that at least every 90 days as the project, once from the time the funds are awarded until the project is complete. We'll talk more about that in details when I get a little later here. Final reports are due within 60 days of completion. And if you have any potential misuse or any irregularities, let me know, or contact if you think I might be involved, or other club district leadership. You have some questions, contact Rotary International directly. If we don't, obviously, I can tell you all day that we're handling everything properly at the district level, but if we're really not, we need someone to be aware of that and make sure those get reported as well. If there's any report of any conflict of interest, either real or perceived, again, let me know. We'll talk about it, figure out if that needs to be, highlighted or eliminated.
Bruce, this is Dave. Are those quarterly updates for district grants until done? Is that effective this year or is that for next year?
I'm going to make that for things that are for next year. I have, just so you know, I have entered all of the 2017-18 grants, excuse me, 17-18-19 grants into the website, and they're there. But the people that put in those grant applications have not been trained on this website, so I'm going to encourage people to do quarterly updates. But the requirement that was for those grants was they have to do at least one progress report at 1 year if it's not done yet. So that would be the requirement that was the old requirement. But we'll call that met if they put in quarterly updates on the website. Thanks for the question, Dave. So successful projects address real community needs. They employ frequent partner and stakeholder communication. That can be both formal and informal communication. But with communication, you'll be much more likely to finish the project on time and within budget. Successful projects build and follow an implementation plan. They're sustainable. In other words, they've got a part of that plan is how you're going to have lasting impact from that project. And they ensure proper stewardship of funds. So, and then they report their success and challenges so we can all learn from those projects. I highly encourage you to talk to other people, both within your club and other clubs in the district, or even clubs outside the district if you have interaction with them, about projects they've done, what went well, what went poorly, and what would they do differently next time. Oops. So, quick overview of the grant process starting for this year. I'm going to go into each of these in more detail, so I'm just going to skip forward at this point. But it's a 12-step program. How about that? First, identify the need. This can be as formal or as informal as is appropriate for your community and your project, but you want to base your project on things that your community actually needs. As I mentioned, for global grants, this is a very formal process. But you talk to resources in your club and the potential partners, talk to people in the community, and then really, key point is get support from your club for the project. And what it may take for support is to show you've got a partner. You may, while you don't necessarily need full statistics on what's the, number of, students, percentage of students in your community that are living below the poverty line to show why you should address low-income needs for low-income children, that may be helpful. So pull together resources you can to identify the need. Then you can jump in some initial planning and budgeting. Highly encourage you at this point to form a small committee. About 3 people or so is probably right for most projects for this initial stage. Figure out at a high level how you're going to get the project done. You may partner with other charitable organizations or other Rotary clubs as a part of this, get their input. And then create an initial budget. Figure out how much your club can contribute, what money, other fundraising you may need to do, and then how much you can ask for in the grant, remembering you have to match the funds you're asking for from the grant. Once you've got that level, then go to the website and create a project. So again, these are some fairly detailed instructions. Don't expect you to memorize these, but use this presentation as user's manual, if you will, for the website when it comes time to enter your project. So you go to, you can either go to magicgrants.org and click on district grants, or you can go directly to the link there and click on submit project. There's a set of terms and conditions that you're supposed to read, and then click on submit a new project. Remember, what you enter here is going to be public information in general. So unless there are certain things you can make private, but just remember that as you are entering things. Once you hit submit project, it brings up a project information page. If you are already logged in to the website, you've already created an account and logged in, this first section, your information, will be missing because it assumes you are you, and that's what you're submitting it for. So if this is the first time you've submitted, or you're just plain not logged in to start with, you enter your name and your email, and then start entering information about the project. You need a project title. This is a relatively short, but should be descriptive title. There's actually a limit on the number of characters the website will let you enter. I don't remember what that is, or don't know exactly, but it's fairly short. Make sure that the grant year is correct. Notice here I've got Rotary year 1819 because that was the year that this grant was submitted for. This is one of my club's grants from last year we did. But you'll be entering 1920 for the grant you're entering next year, for the next Rotary cycle. There's an areas of focus. You should check all the areas that apply there. This is just check boxes. If this is a CAP grant and none of them are particularly appropriate, you can leave that part blank. But the next one is the activity type. That requires an entry. And so the list there on the right, in the small print of the list, just give you an idea. Those are the potential activity types you can select, and those actually come from the Rotary Foundation's grant site. I will have to categorize it as one of those things when I enter it into as a part of our district grant. But if none of those are really applicable, just pick the one that's best, because you can't leave it blank. And then enter a summary, which is a little bit longer. Think about a one sentence description. And then the product description is more detailed. That should be enough so that someone can understand what's being done. It doesn't have to go into all the detail, but you certainly can. But I would keep that a paragraph or two on the website at this point. Then this is the second half of that same page. You need to enter a contact person for this project. This may be you, it may not be. Hopefully the person entering it is the contact person. It should be in most cases. You need to put in the district number, the club name, and if you get that wrong, it'll prompt you and give you the options that are closest so you can select a real club. The contact name and the email for that contact. Then you need to put in a project budget. A total budget, and then a club contribution and a district contribution. The district contribution, DDF, is the money you're asking for in the grant. And then you put in where the check would be sent to, assuming you get approved, and we send a check out. And then there's a box to check to show that you're saying, I certify this is in line with the Rotary Foundation mission statement, and you click on save. Somebody have a question? Yeah?
Real quick question. What if the total budget is, let's say, $10,000, your club's putting in 1,000 and you're asking the district for 1,000? That doesn't, the club and district doesn't have to add up to the total budget, does it?
I'll talk a little bit more of that in a little bit. The answer is on this site, you basically need to include all funding sources other than the district contribution and your club contribution numbers. That's the short answer. Okay. So before it can move forward and be funded, the club contribution plus district contribution has to equal the total budget. And you can either finesse that by making the budget smaller of what the project is for, or adding other funds the club contribution. So we'll talk about that in a little bit more, another slide or two. So once you enter that information, hit submit, the project goes to proposed status within the website. And you'll bring up this page. It just shows you what that page looks like. And it says awaiting review. Once the project's been proposed, I will get an email, the grant subcommittee team will, and we can go in and see if it looks appropriate. And if it generally looks like it generally meets the guidelines, we can approve that. Again, that's not final approval, but it's actually published is what it's called. We publish it, and then it becomes visible on the website as a project. Again, don't confuse getting that first stage and getting approved. It just means that it looks like it generally is in line. If there's questions, we may contact you in advance and say, hey, what's going on with this? Or we may publish it and then ask more questions later because the information can be changed. Most of the information can be changed while it's in the published state. If this is the first time you've used the website, you'll need to set up an account. So you'll get an email in response. One thing I'll recommend is I had some of the email go to spam folder. So you may want to add matchinggrants.org to your spam whitelist, the allowed email for spam, so you don't block it. You'll also you click on a link and you'll get a 4-digit number. You click on the link, it'll take you to a login. Enter that as your password, that 4-digit number. Click login, and you are logged into the site. This is an example of what you'll see the first time you log in. If you create a project, you've got a project that you're associated with. And I would highly recommend you change your password from the 4-digit number to something more passwordy. I'm sure you've all heard about good password hygiene. This website does not seem to enforce any particular rules on the password, but again, a good password is probably a good idea. If you want to go to see the information on the project, you can click on the project up above there, where it says Josh's Ride in this case. So once you've got it into the website, any questions on that? Like I said, that's just the very beginning of creating the shell structure on the website.
Say, this is Jolene Tomhave. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, yes.
Great. I'm curious. I'm sorry I was late, a couple minutes late, and I might have missed this. Is there a place that we can go browse what sort of grants have been done in the past couple of years? Or
Great question, because going to this matchinggrants.org website it's been used by several other districts for several years. So that gives you a look at what has happened, not so much in this district, because only last year's grants, or excuse me, this year's and 2018-19 grants are in that site. But you can see a lot of projects from other clubs and other districts. Now, other districts may have somewhat different rules for district grants, but in general, they're going to be applicable. The other thing is you can go to our district website, and under the Rotary Foundation and grants pull-down menu, there's a list of past grants since I think from 2012 onward. I think it is. I don't remember off the top of my head. And you can look at the grants each year that have been done in this district. And Jolene, what club are you with? Because I missed that going in earlier.
I'm a brand new member to Brookings.
Brookings, okay. As long as we've paused here, is there anyone else that's joined since we started that did not tell me what club they're with or at the beginning? Diana, Linda, Carol, Nicholas, or Tahiri? Any of you on? Okay. Well, welcome, Jolene. Glad to have you getting trained on this as a brand new member.
I'm excited about it. Thank you.
So the next step is to really complete the project planning. And my first step there would be fill out your grant committee for the project. Again, the grant committee Maybe the two or three people you started with are enough, depending on if it's a small one-off project. Other projects are much bigger, and you may need more than 3 people. You may need 4 or 5 people to really handle each aspect of the project. So you need to figure that out and get the appropriate people from your club assigned to those roles. You want to set goals and plan how you're going to evaluate the success of this project. And then you need to develop a full implementation plan, including a detailed budget. You should have a contingency plan. Shock, I hate to say this, but not every project goes exactly according to plan. That's just the way things work. So be thinking about things that might go wrong and what you might do in response to that. And then another key aspect are form a document retention plan. How are you going to retain those documents for the 5 years required? How are you going to make sure they're accessible to people that want to see it? And what are you going to do if the person that's currently taking care of that goes away, leaves the club or whatever, for whatever reason? Who's going to take over? What are you going to make sure? How are you going to make sure those things get handled? I would actually highly recommend look at using the Matching Grants website as your repository for all your documentation. We'll talk about it later, but you can upload whatever document you want up there, and our district is going to be paying for backup on a nightly backup basis specific to our club, so we can have an offsite backup of our own, other things. So it should be fairly secure retention for that. How do you set goals? Well, many of you have been through many, I'm sure, training in other areas about how to set goals. They should be qualitative, descriptive. They need to be measurable. You can have qualitative, descriptive, measurable, or quantitative, numeric, measurable goals, but they ought to be measurable. Need to be sustainable. Again, you don't want to just be a flash in the pan and be gone tomorrow. Sometimes you need to gather baseline data through a needs assessment. If you say, hey, I want to improve the number of kids that read a book over the summer by 25%, well, you kind of need to know how many books were read by kids over the summer last summer. Another thing you may think about when you're setting a goal are SMART goals. Kind of set up the things you need to think about what makes a good goal: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. If a goal doesn't meet all 5 of those things, you may want to think about, should that goal be improved? So the implementation plan should keep the goal in mind, identify tasks and assign responsibilities. Some key ones are financial management. Everything should have a financial management plan and person responsible for how to do that. If you've got a partner, as well as how you interact and communicate with the beneficiaries, if you need to have a liaison, who's going to be responsible for maintaining those communication links? And then someone's got to be in charge of creating the actual grant request, keeping track of the records, and reporting afterwards. So those are really key areas that every implementation plan should address and have individuals assigned to. As we already talked about, a contingency plan. It's good to have a schedule. Sometimes the schedule is really simple. We've scheduled this event on October 15th at 9 a.m. at the Methodist Church, who's our partner. You know, we've done a couple grant projects in my club that was essentially the schedule. And then once you started the process, follow the plan. If you have an implementation plan and then you put it away and ignore it afterwards, it doesn't do you any good. Again, ideally, that implementation plan, implementation plan should be written. Maybe it's built in and documented in your grant request if it's fairly short, but it also may be a separate document to make sure that all the details are actually covered. And again, that document can be uploaded to the Matching Grant website. Budget and financial planning, be sure to be realistic. If you've got a big project with lots of expensive items, you may want to do competitive bidding, but use reasonable prices. Don't just guess, hey, I know I can, saw this on sale last week, the sale ended, but I'm pretty sure it'll go on sale again. that may not be the best way to figure out what things are going to cost. You know, Amazon's a great resource for getting an idea, because at least it gives you a baseline of what you can generally get it for. Disclose any potential conflicts of interest. As I said, it doesn't mean you can't use, for instance, if you've got a project and you're going to use a contractor as a part of that project to you know, install a fence, say, at a local ball diamond. That doesn't mean that contractor can't be owned by Rotarian, but disclose that, and that'd be a great place to use competitive bidding to show the reason you chose them is because they gave you the best price, not because they're Rotarian. As a part of this, you need to figure out what your funding sources are. Some key parts of that, potential sources of funds are your existing club funds, funds from partners, as well as fundraisers. You can say, I'm gonna do a fundraiser. We're going to, you know, have a fundraiser, and we're going to raise, you know, $1,000 for this project as a part of, you know, we're going to have a bake sale, you know, to raise funds, whatever the case may be. Then you need to fill out the grant request form. I've updated the form for this year. It'll look pretty familiar for those of you that have used one before, but it's a little different. Again, this is available from our district website. I've updated it this year so you can only enter information into defined fields. That'll make it a little easier to figure out where you need to put information than it was in the past, formatted a little bit better. And your implementation plan should address everything in this form. So once your implementation plan is done, it should be really easy to figure out how to fill out the grant request. The first section is basic information, and that should match the website information that you've already entered in the website. One thing I'll point out, so things like title, the description, or the summary, things like that should match. It also asks for the grant number that is assigned by the website. So you'll actually get that from the website once you submit a grant request or create a project. It'll create a project number, a P- 4-digit number that you will put on the grant request form. The budget has asking in this grant request, there's actually 2 lines in the budget. One is the amount you've requested. That should match what you put in for district contribution DDF in the website. And then there's another entry in the form called minimum acceptable amount. That is not on the website. And this is something, wasn't an issue last year where we were undersubscribed, but 2 years ago, we were oversubscribed by 50%. We had requests for 50% more money than we had to give out. And so what this is put in the number that is the minimum amount you could get with a grant and have your project still be viable. In other words, in some cases, it may be, I'm asking for $1,000. We've got $1,000 in club money. That's all we can do. And this project costs $2,000. If we don't get $1,000 in grant money, we can't do this project. That's fine. In other cases, maybe you've got some alternate funding, some alternate sources, or you could scale back the project a bit if the amount is less. So you can put that in there. And that doesn't mean you're going to get less than you asked for, but what it may mean is that your project gets funded at a lower amount instead of being dropped altogether. So that's why we're asking for that number. Then enter the project description. In some cases, this may be the same as you put in the project description on the website, but in general, there's going to be more detail here than you put in the project description for the website. Include things like goals and objectives, your location, who's the beneficiary, how will it benefit the community and improve the lives of less fortunate. And also, please address the sustainability of the project. How are you going to make sure that this is something that will have a lasting impact. You can refer to a separate document if you've got an implementation plan or other documents, for instance, quotes or other things from outside sources. You can just refer to those and then upload those, or attach those, or upload those separately to the website. The other thing is that I'm asking for here is an estimated start and completion date that's not included on the website as well. So again, I'm looking for specific dates there. And again, don't plan on starting your project before about October 1st, and it has to be completed within 2 years. Again, estimates are fine for those dates. I'm not going to hold you to it if you don't hit those exactly, but gives us an idea. Next, the next section is describe non-financial participation by Rotarians. One of the foundation requirements is active participation, not just check writing by Rotarians as a part of the project. So tell us what they're going to be doing. Now, key point here, active participation can include planning, project management, reporting on the project, creating public awareness of the project. It doesn't have to be, for instance, if you've got a tree planting project, that doesn't mean that only the people that are out there digging holes count. Remember, all these aspects are part of the project, so don't forget to include those. And then, what is your public relations plan? We've talked in the past about the three-legged stool for Rotary, with the foundation, with membership, and with public relations. One of the reasons, the key things that people may want to join and be part of the Rotary in the future is the impact it has on the community. They say, hey, Rotary Club's doing great things in my town. I'd like to be a part of that. Well, if they don't know that you're the one that put up that new, backstop for the ball diamond, how are they going to know the good things you're doing? So, make sure you've got local press coverage, Rotary mentions, social media, whatever. But put together a plan of how you're going to address public relations as part of this project. And then the last or the next part of that request form are 2 club contacts. Ideally, both of them are trained. Great to see multiple people, 4 people here from, or 3 or 4 people from Brookings tonight. To have more than one person from my club trained. Brookings, I think you guys, 3 or 4 grants you got approved last year. So it's great to get multiple people involved. And then once you've got those contacts, both of those should be added as an administrator for the project on the website. I'll show you where to do that in a minute. And then the next section is what are the cooperating organizations, if any. If you've got a cooperating organization, for instance, someone you're partnering with to do it, include a letter with the application describing where they say, yeah, we're involved in this project and this is what we're going to do. So we know they're really involved and on board. But again, Rotarians have to be the leaders of the project, not the cooperating organization. Doesn't mean your club can't be a cooperating organization with some other project, but to qualify for the grant, it should be Rotarian-led. Okay. Hang on just a second. A pilot error there. The next 2 parts of the grant request form are income and expenses. In income, the first line should match the district contribution DDF, which is the amount you're requesting. And that should not exceed 50% of the total project income in general. That's a district requirement. The second line should be for club contributed funds. So if you, this is money your club's going to contribute. If you're going to do a special fundraiser for that, list that separately on its own line. So each additional funding source beyond that should have its own line in the income section. If you're still trying to raise funds, you don't really know exactly where they're coming from, it's okay to say that in the, put that in as one line in the income source. However, if time comes to approve the project and we contact and you still don't know, that may not be the best. By the time we approve the projects, we'd like to make sure you really have all the financing lined up. And then at the bottom, you've got a sum of the total project income. If you've got a bunch of different funding sources, it's okay to have a separate sheet to detail them more. But in most cases, I think the lines that are in the form should be enough. And then the expense section, list each major expense category separately. Again, if you've got a complex project, you may have a separate sheet to go into all the detail you'd like to, but in general, probably the lines are listed there. I think there's 5 or 6 lines. It should be enough to give enough detail to understand how the money is being spent. And then put a total project expense at the bottom of that. Another thing that I regularly get requests every year where the income does not match the expenses. The income has to match the expenses in your planning. If you've got more income than you plan of expenses, well, reduce the income or increase the expenses. And vice versa. If you've got more expenses than you got income, identify that, even if right now is we're still looking for another $1,000 from other community organizations. You know, that's fine in the grant request. Again, hopefully you've got that settled by the time it comes time to approve it. Okay, once you've got all that information, I want to talk a little bit about the financing tab on the website for the project. This kind of ties in with the question that I think was Don asked earlier. So for the project on the website, once you go into that project, there's a tab called financing. And that will show how much has been pledged or contributed to that project by your club and the DDF. And then if your total budget you entered into that form is greater than the amount that of the club funds and grant funds, it'll show additional contributions needed and as a red number. Now, once you publish that, that actually will show up on that matchinggrants.org website, and it is possible for other people or clubs to click on a link and pledge to support your project. Now, personally, I don't have an experience with this, although I did talk to the grants chair of District 5630 that uses it, and he said he'd never seen it. I think it's unlikely you're going to get unsolicited pledges from that, but it's possible. So if you get notice that there's an unsolicited pledge, please check it out. Maybe it's real, but you know, it also could be someone that just clicked to see what would happen. So check that out. If you've got funding coming from non-Rotary sources, enter that as a contribution from your club, but they enter them separately in the income section in the grant request form. So for instance, let's say again, using my Boys and Girls Club example, if your club's contributing $1,000, the Boys and Girls Club's contributing $1,000, enter that as club contribution as $2,000 on the website, but separate them in separate lines in your grant request form. If you got funding coming from other Rotary sources, other Rotary clubs or districts, then you can actually enter those in the website separately by clicking on the Record a New Contribution link on the funding tab and having the information entered. They can do it themselves by clicking on the pledge support, or you can do it for them in the administration section. Once your contributions match your total budget in the website, the project status changes to fully funded, and you'll get an email that indicates that. Again, if you get an unexpected contribution, follow up. Don't just plan on it showing up as a check in your doorstep. If it's not real, you can delete it. And once you're to that point, it's time to finalize your grant request. At the end of the grant request, there's a checklist. Again, I don't think I've ever gotten a grant request where some of those things were checked or initialed and others weren't. I occasionally get one with no initials or checks, but I never get one partially there, even though it's obvious some of the things weren't done just from reading the grant request. So don't just mindlessly check each box. The checklist is there to help you get the form filled out properly, not just to get a bunch of check boxes or initials. So really check on each item, make sure you understand what's required and that your request is compliant with the rules. At this point, it's good to go back to the website and ensure that the description and budget are updated and are consistent with your request form. You can update it at this point in there, but especially the budget should be consistent, because I'll be honest, once I've evaluated your request form, in the future, I'm going to look at the website to see how much money you're asking for. So, hang on, my wife's calling just a second. Once you've done that, you need to convert the request form to a PDF. The request form is a Word form. That means it's a Word document with specific areas where you can enter data. So you need to convert that to a PDF. The easiest way to do that in Word, at least Word 2010 and onward on the PC, where I'm familiar with it, is to use the Save As and then select PDF as the file type. And that will just save it as a PDF file. There's also, you can use a PDF print driver and print to a file. There's various versions of that, including from Microsoft, Qt PDF, and others. If you have problems, let me know. I'll try to help you figure out how to get that done. Also, highly recommend saving it as a doc file or docx file, a native Word file. That allows you to do future editing if you need to make the changes to that request form. Once that's done, you can upload it to the website. I will point out there's 2 views to each project in the matchinggrants.org website. There's the public view, which is shown on the left. And at the top of the public view, and this is what's available the general public can see. And there'll be certain things they can see in the description, the financing, documents, whatever. If you click on the administration button, it takes you to the administration view, which is shown on the right. And that has a button that'll take you back to the project view or the public view. If you have administrative privileges for a project, you will see additional information on the administration side. And that's where you have to go if you want to make any changes. If you want to edit things, you want to upload things, go to the administration view of that project. So that's where you go if you want to edit the description, finance, or upload things. To upload a document, you need to go to the Documents tab, enter the name into the name of the file. You can either do that by entering it in or using Browse to find that file name. And then you also have to give it a name that it's going to be referred to on the website. Now, if it's a grant request, it may be, Lamar's grant request. That's fine, but you have to give it a name. In some cases, you may have information you don't want to share with the general public in the document you're uploading. So that can include things that are more private, like phone numbers and addresses. It also may be things later on with credit card numbers, that kind of stuff. If you don't want to make it available to the general public, click Restricted Access, and then only people with administrative access to the project will be able to see it. So that's, I think, an important thing to remember, because this is public information once it's uploaded if you don't click Restricted Access. You can also upload additional supporting documentation. For instance, if you've got a written implementation plan, you may want to upload it here for document retention purposes. If you've got pro forma invoices or estimates to support your request, you may want to upload those. Whatever documents you want, again, you can make them more private by clicking Restricted, and then only people with administrative access will see them. The other thing is, if you got pictures, you can upload JPEG pictures under the Photo tab using the same sort of information. Once you've got the documents uploaded and everything's ready to go, it's time to sign the request. We're using an electronic signing process, so you don't need to print it out, take it to your club president, have them sign it, find a scanner, scan it, make sure it's PDF, and upload it. We're using an electronic signing process. So the first thing to do is make sure your signers are on the distribution list. The required signers are your president and your president-elect for the Rotary year that you are putting this in for. So that would mean for the 1920 Rotary year we're talking about here, you'd be your president for 1920 and your president for 2021. Now, I know a lot of clubs don't look that far out for their president. They don't have a president-elect this early. So if you don't have a president-elect, then you can have another officer of your club be the second signer. The other people we want to sign are both contacts. They're listed on your request. Now, in some cases, maybe even in most cases, I find that at least one of the contacts is one of the president or president-elect, so there's some overlap there. But at least I want to have the contacts and 2 club officers, including the president, electronically sign each one. You can add other parties if you want, but remember, everyone you designate as a signer must sign it before the application will be submitted. So if you're adding them, you can add them in that lower section there where you're adding people to the distribution list. They need to be able to, I highly recommend, I don't remember now actually, if somebody needs to double check. I think to be a signer, you have to have email distribution list, but you may have to have administrator access as well. I actually don't remember right now. Sorry about that. I thought I had that in here. I may have it in a different spot. Make sure all those signers are added to the project. Once you've got everyone added and you're ready to sign it, start the signing process by clicking the start, going to the description, and in the administrative view, click Start Club Signature Process. You select the documents you want to include in the email going out. I'd highly recommend the final grant request. And then if you've got other projects that, or other documents you've uploaded that you think are important for the signers to see, you can include those and attach those to the email as well. Then select the people you want to sign. That may be, for instance, I will show up on the list of the distribution list for all these projects, but I don't want to sign all of them. I don't know anything about the project, so don't include me as a signer as the project. Just include the signatures you want. And once they're there, click Send Application for Signatures, and it will change the status to submitted and send emails out to everyone that you've selected. Each signatory will then get an email that looks like this, that tells them, it gives them a signature key. It's a 4-digit number, and it tells the person what they need to do to sign the project. It gives a quick overview of the project, and any documents that you checked will be attached. I would highly suggest you warn the signatories, the people, that this is coming, and that way they know it's not spam. And you might even advise them to put matchinggrants.org on their whitelist for their spam filter. If they don't get it within a certain amount of time, again, double check you make sure you entered the correct email address, because if you enter it wrong, it's going to send it to the wrong address. And also have them check their spam folder. Once they click on that link, it'll bring up a page that will ask them to enter in their signature, and once that 4-digit number, and once they click sign, they've then signed it. Once all the people have signed it, then it goes to sign status and awaits approval from the district grant committee. Again, we're now in the August timeframe. You've submitted your project by the deadline, it's been signed, and we're looking at the project, deciding what will get approved. For this year, that will be myself, Mike Gibson, who is the foundation chair, and Ina Winter, who is the 2019-20 district governor. If it's not approved, or funding's been reduced, we'll let you know. But if it's just approved, you'll get an email from the website saying it's been approved. And then once the check's been mailed, the project status will change to paid, and you'll get another email, hopefully a check followed up soon after that. Any questions on the process and how to enter a project into the website? Again, I know there's a lot of detail there. I don't expect you to remember all of it now, but hopefully this presentation will be useful for you to walk through when the time comes. Okay, then I'm going to move on. So once you've submitted it, you've got the project approved, and you've been paid, it's time to execute the project. Again, don't incur any expenses until funds are received, and follow your implementation plan. You did it for a reason. Don't just upload to the website and forget about it. It's helpful to follow the plan. Again, I'm going to point out again, don't forget public relations. Hopefully you talk about what you're going to do in your implementation plan, follow through. And don't be afraid to use your partners and any beneficiaries to publicize Rotary involvement. You're a local community organization, you try to get your community paper, maybe the local access channel on cable, whatever, get it out there. Find a lot of businesses may have a sign that banks, whatever, have a sign they'll put up community announcements on. Get it on there that Rotary Club is sponsoring such and such. Don't forget to document the activities and retain records. Pictures are great. Keep track of the hours spent, people involved. Try to do that separately, Rotarians and in general. You'll see why in a minute. And then track expenses and retain receipts. That's very important. Mentioned preliminary reporting earlier. Now, it used to be there was a requirement if you weren't done within 1 year, submit a preliminary report. I'm changing that a little bit because the website makes this much easier. At least quarterly, get on the website, go to the administration page on the history log, and enter an update once a quarter. It could be something like, hey, order has been placed for equipment on such and such a date. And you can do this more often. You can do this every time. You should do this every time some major milestone is met for your project. You've ordered the equipment. You've got your for instance, one of the projects we did, we gave a bike to a disabled child. We've selected the recipient. We had a partner organization that was going to help us do this. The bike was ordered. The bike was received. We set a date to present the bike, and then we actually presented the bike. So document that as you go to help you keep track of things, and that will meet your quarterly documentation date.
Hey, Bruce.
Yeah.
I'm not clear. Will, if you don't do that regularly, are you dinged every quarterly? Do you get an email to remind you to do that?
I'm told the answer to that is yes. I think it's every 2 months, actually, is what I think it is. But so we're all new to this website, so we'll find out exactly what it is. Excuse me just a second here.
Thanks, Bruce.
So, I believe you'll get a regular update saying, hey, nothing's happened in the last 2 months. Do something. But we'll find out. Okay, that's preliminary reporting. Pretty simple. And I think much more effective than what we had with the earlier preliminary reports where I had to, drop a piece of paper in the mail or something. Okay, then finish the project. Publicize it. You finish this. This is a big deal. You've done something for community. You've done good. You made a difference, and celebrate your success. Maybe get out there, talk to other community organizations what you did. Have a party at your club meeting, whatever. Celebrate it because it's a big deal. You finished this project. Then evaluate the project against your initial goals. The fact you didn't exactly meet your initial goals doesn't mean the project was a failure, but you should look at what the goals were and whether you met them or not, and then learn whether or not, what for next time. Maybe you were a little too aggressive, or maybe you weren't aggressive enough in your goal setting. So spend some time evaluating your project. If your actual expenses were less than the initial request, you may need to return some grant funds, because remember, the used grant funds may not exceed 50% of total expenses. So as an example, if you had a project with a $2,000 total budget, it was going to be $1,000 of club money and $1,000 of grant money. We send you a check for $1,000. You do the project and you only spend $1,800. So that means you don't have to return all 200. You have to return 100 of that, because at the end of the day, your total expenses were $1,800. The grant can only be at max half of that. So you'd have to return $100. As another example, that same thing, if you had a $1,000 grant request and you're going to match that with use $2,000 of club funds because it was a cap grant, you only wanted to cost $1,000, and then only spent $2,800, then you wouldn't have to return any of it because the grant didn't exceed half of the total budget. So if you end up in that situation, contact the grants chair on where to send the check and the details on how to return those funds to the foundation. Basically, you'll send it to the district and we'll send it back into the foundation. That's how that works. Then it's time to do the final report. You can download that from the district website or from matchinggrants.org. I'll show you in a minute where that is. And again, it's a form, it's a Word form, so you can only enter information into defined fields of that form. And again, this form must be completed by Rotarians. If you got a partner organization, that's fine, but we're asking for Rotarians to be responsible for this project and report and verify you did what the project report says you did. So it needs to be completed by Rotarians. Spend some time evaluating the project before tackling the report. Don't just dive in and try to fill out the things. Think about what could you do better next time? Did you meet your goals? And don't wait till the very last minute to get the report done. Get started right after you're done with the report. You've got 60 days to get that report in, but you should start thinking about it right away. And earlier is better than later. If you run into problems completing the project, let me know in advance and we can work out some details about what's going on. But for instance, Madison had a project last couple of years ago, and they were going to build a peace garden at the hospital, a garden, and they got in and they found lots of problems when they went in to do the earthwork, and that delayed the project for like 6 months, and they were having trouble meeting the 2 years. So just if you run into problems, let us know. Pictures are encouraged but not required. Pictures can be either included in the report or uploaded to the website. Actually, now I say that, I'm not sure in the form if I can even include the pictures in the report or not anymore. So upload them to the website. And remember to keep copies of the application and report along with the other receipts as your club records. Now, your club records can be on the matchinggrant.org website as long as people in your club know that. So, the first section of the report is just the basic information from that matches the website and the application. Things like the grant number, the title, that kind of stuff. And then the project description, what was actually done. Now, usually this will be similar to the project description in the report, but it will seldom be the same because stuff happens. You don't end up doing exactly what you thought you were going to do. So talk about what you did. What was the location and date? Were the goals met? Who are the beneficiaries of the report? What were the actual benefits were realized by this? Maybe this benefits you didn't realize it was going to have when you wrote the request. Again, pictures are great. Which areas of focus were actually addressed? You may find, hey, we didn't realize it was this was going to have an impact in education, but it does. So click things that you actually addressed, you think, as a part of the project. The 6 areas of focus. And then talk a little bit about how benefits will be sustained. And if there's a follow-up needed, which is always a good idea, plan for it. What was the participation? We're looking for number of Rotarians and the total hours spent. as well as the total number of people and the hours spent. Estimates are fine, but want actual numbers. So you know, don't just say half the club. Say we had 9 Rotarians there, and we think they put in approximately 18 Rotarian hours of work. And then there were an additional, you know, 2 people that weren't Rotarians were there, so we had 10 people total, and we had a total of 20 hours work. So those are the information we're going to be asking for. And report those to your club president, because in Club Central, there's a place for them to enter how many hours of community service your club put in. And that's something that Rotary International likes to roll up and to show the impact that Rotary is having on the world. So encourage your club president to enter those into Club Central. That is myrotary.org. The next section is describe what Rotarians actually did. Pictures, again, are great. You know, people of action, I think, is the catchphrase that Rotary is using. And don't forget the planning, management, follow-up as things that Rotarians did, if they did those things. Who are the non-Rotarian beneficiaries? We're looking for a number of, and again, this isn't who, it's how many non-Rotarian beneficiaries were there. Again, estimates are fine. We did a project where we built chlorine producing units. We built 50 of those units, but each unit can support a community of up to 2,000 people to desanitize their water and disinfect their water. And so 50 units times 2,000 people, potentially 100,000 beneficiaries from this one project. Those are sort of numbers that we're looking for here. What are the impact? Sometimes the actual numbers of beneficiaries are small. I mean, maybe you're you know, providing a bicycle to a disabled child. Well, maybe the answer is 1. Maybe the answer is 5 because her whole family benefits. But we're looking for real numbers. Then describe the long-term impacts. Think sustainability and long-term outcomes there. Cooperating organizations, list what, if you had any, who they were and what they did. And then the actual income. In most cases, that'll match what you had in your grant request, probably. But you do need to update that to match what actually happened. And then expenses. List each major expense category separately. Provide scans of receipts, paid invoices, upload those to the website. And again, you get this every year in the report as well. The income needs to match expenses. If you brought in more income than you had expenses, where did that money go, right? If it was club funds you didn't spend on the project, keep it, don't report it. If it was, you know, grant income that you need to return, report that as a negative income as unused district grants return and include a check for the amount there. Again, if you end up with funds you got to return, contact me. We'll help you figure out how to walk through that. The total,
Hey, Bruce?
Yeah.
In terms of like donated labor or contributions in kind, do you have any advice on how to report that on the income?
I may ask you what you think as well there, because I believe the answer there is that should be reported in what was done, not as, I'm not sure. I don't believe in-kind donations count for matching funds, right?
Well, I'll give you an example. On our recent grant for the band stage, we had donated labor, and we wanted to recognize the contractor for his donated labor. So on ours, we put in, and we haven't done the final yet, but we put in donated labor as a project income and also as an expense. So it was kind of a zero balance deal. Is that something that would be acceptable?
Yeah, I think so. I guess the question I have, if you're counting on that as part of your matching funds, you know, let's just use a hypothetical example. Let's say if you've got a project that is going to be $1,000 in material and $1,000 in labor. So you got a $2,000 budget for your project. And you're saying that I'm requesting $1,000 in grant money, and I'm going to provide $1,000 in donated labor as matching funds. I personally don't believe that would be kosher. I guess that's something we could talk more, because I don't know that that specifically violates any rules, but I would think, to me, I would say don't use donated material as part of your matching funds for the grant. Is that what you've done in the past before I took this over? Because again, this is a good question. I don't have necessarily a final answer for.
In my past life as your position, we did not run across this, but we did not include that in our initial application. We did not include donated stuff in our initial application, but in our final report, we're planning to do that.
I think that's good. So I think that makes sense. If you've got donated materials or labor, especially donated labor, I think you include those as a separate line item in both income and expense. Donated materials are a little easier to price, and really get value in. But again, I think for donated material, probably the same thing. Include that in as a line item in income and a line item in expense that cancel each other out. I guess if it comes in, you need to count on some of that as matching funds. You have that on a case-by-case basis. But in general, I think in the request, let's take an example. You were in the request, you were planning on buying $1,000 worth of lumber. Local lumberyard, when you go to buy it, steps in and say, "Hey, we're going to donate it instead." Does that mean that your grant's no longer eligible? No, it's not. So I think probably would be, don't count on using donated labor materials in your request, but report it in your report, and it will deal with it on a case-by-case basis. Does that sound like it makes sense?
It sounds like it meets the four-way test to me.
Yeah. Okay, good question. Once the report's done, we're actually going to ask for a real signature on this one. There's no electronic signing of this in the website. So print it, have it signed by someone in your club that can certify the statement on the report that says this is really true. Maybe that's your club president. It probably is the contact that was listed, or the overall person that's been managing the project. If you have access to electronic signature technology like DocuSign, you can use that. But the website does not have electronic signing for the final report. And then it needs to be a PDF format to upload it, so you can scan it into PDF in most scanners or whatever, but it needs to be a PDF. And then once you've got the final report in PDF form, go to the website and upload it. Very similar to how you did it before, but in this case, you go to description in the administration side. You can download the blank report form there if you haven't done that already from the same form as on the website, the matchinggrants.org website, and on our district website. Once you got it, upload it using the upload section under documents. Probably, especially the receipts, recommend restricted access because those may have financial information you don't want to make public. And once you've got everything uploaded, you want to upload report, receipts, anything else, click on the reported button, which is number 3 there, to actually submit the final report. Once that report has been received, we'll review it as the district grant subcommittee, and if everything's okay, If there are problems, we got questions, we may revert back to paid and ask you for more information. But if everything looks okay, we'll approve the report and it will go to completed status, and then the shows up as a completed project on the website. Follow-up was the last step, step 12. Some projects need more follow-up than others, but in general, I would say most projects, it's good to have at least one follow-up to see how things went. Does the beneficiary getting the benefits you thought they were going to get? And if you're doing follow-ups, provide an update in the history log. You can still use the history log on the matchinggrants.org website after the project is completed. Say, hey, we checked on it. You know, our ball diamond is being used every Saturday by, from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Whatever is appropriate. Or hey, we checked our project and needed a fresh coat of paint. We're going to do that next weekend. And then once we painted the shed that we fixed up. So follow-up's an important part of this from the sustainability point of view. Okay, so that gets through the thing. Any questions at this point? A lot of information in 2 hours, as you can tell from my voice.
Bruce, one real quick question. The projects that are outstanding now are not in this system. Is that correct? This is new going forward.
So 2017, 18, and earlier are not in the matchinggrants.org website and will not be entered into that website. 2018, 19 grants, I entered in. Now, they sometimes show Lamar's as the sponsoring club because I didn't figure out until I was halfway through that I could change that. I've asked the person that manages the website to fix that, and he says he's going to. But if you look and you see your project is shown as Lamar's, don't worry about it. That wasn't intentional. But I'm not going to, and I will upload things from district document retention point of view, starting for this 18-19 Rotary year, into that website as our document retention plan starting for this year, not next year. If you want to use that, if you're responsible for one of those projects and you want to use that website to do your reporting, let me know. I'll add you to that project, and you can do the reports the new way.
Okay.
If you want to do the reports the old way, that's fine. That's what those people were trained on for those grants, and that's fine. So this is a kind of a transition year. 18, 19 will be kind of a transition year.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions? So this is some resources that you may find useful. First of all is the district website. If you go to the district website, there's a pull-down menu called the Rotary Foundation and Grants. Underneath that, you can see there's several items listed. That includes a link to the club qualification page on matchinggrants.org. We talked about to upload your MOU. I will be inputting information about which clubs have people trained into that. So that will keep track of what clubs have qualified. The MOU is available for download here. If you want to actually download it, print it, and sign it, you can either get it here or the matchinggrants.org website, as we talked about. This PowerPoint presentation is there as well. Now, the version that's there at this very minute is the version from yesterday. I made some modifications today, and I'm going to make a few modifications after this tonight. Like I'll probably add a section on donated labor and materials that aren't in that. So if you want to wait a couple days before you download it, I would recommend doing that. And get the first page will have of anything that after today or after, will have a date that it was last updated. So make sure it's a date after the 29th of April to make sure you got the most recent form. I don't anticipate any major changes after tonight. So as long as it's dated April 30th or later, it should be fine. The district grant application form, the new one, and the final grant application form are here. If you're reporting on an older grant, you can use this new form, that's fine, or the old form is also available as well, I believe, in the download section of the webpage. But you can use the new form if you want there. There's several links here to Rotary Foundation documents that you may find useful and some really light reading. The terms and conditions for Rotary grants is there. That's a medium-sized document. I think, if I remember right, in the neighborhood of 30 pages or so. The Rotary Foundation Code of Policies is like 300 pages long, so feel free to download and digest that at your leisure. That includes things like the conflict of interest policy and all sorts of things that, it's there as a reference. The voice and visual identity guidelines is the rules on how to use the Rotary trademarks properly so that you meet the guidelines of how the Rotary International wants Rotary to be presented to the public. Linda Peterson will be forever grateful if you do that properly in her new role as zone PR person. And then the link to the IRS, the information on the IRS Form 990 from District 5630 I put in here as well. Of course, the other resource, I'm here. If you have questions, you can email me, call me by phone with questions about whether you think, if you've got questions on whether a project you're thinking about would be an appropriate grant subject, I can certainly answer those. You have questions on the forums, questions on the website, I'll do my best to answer those. Here's some additional help on the matchinggrants.org website. Especially the first three, you may find helpful as you're looking through that. The next two are more down and dirty, more kind of aimed at administrator role, how you administrate the website, but feel free to look at those if you want. And just to let you know, an evaluation survey will be sent to you sometime in the next few days, hopefully tomorrow, but I won't guarantee that. I'm not sure if it will be a SurveyMonkey questionnaire or a Word document for the fill out, but I want to get some feedback on this training. So we're just about at the 2-hour mark, but if you got any questions, I'll stay on as long as people have questions.
Bruce.
Yeah.
This is a high-level administrative thing, but is there any change to the spending plan committee role in terms of this new website, the approval process? We're still going to be meeting to go over the project submitted, is that right? That's correct.
Any one of the three of us has the ability to go in and approve a project in the website. But from a process point of view within the district, I don't want to change that. I want it to be the three of us on this committee, the grant subcommittee, to make the decision on what gets approved.
Thank you.
It'll just improve the communication on, how you have access to all the different grant requests, and give us a platform to use as we discuss. Because again, I'm a big believer in not getting a car and driving all the way across South Dakota if we don't have to. So we'll probably do it as a webinar, using the Zoom web conferencing, and then we can just pull up and look at the different projects on the website when we're evaluating them.
Perfect.
Any other questions? Well, with that, I want to thank you for attending. Hopefully you learned something. If you got any questions, follow up by phone or email, and I look forward to getting some great grant requests from all of you.
Great job, Bruce.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Go State.
Thanks.
Hey. All right.